First of all, mate, how you going and what you been up to during this COVID-19 outbreak? I know you guys got to play one round, but it sort of stopped after that. So what's been going on?
Yeah, it's been interesting, mate. It's obviously first round wasn't ideal for us in a way that we started, but since then, mate, I think it was probably the Tuesday we all got told that it was pretty much shut down, and you've all been stood down until further notice. So it's been unusual. In this time, though, we've still been able to keep in contact with the players via obviously Zoom or text messages and phone calls and stuff. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to train them. So that's probably the hard part. I think it's been nearly 7 or 8 weeks now. So it's getting a bit long in the tooth. But hopefully, it's not too far away, mate, where we can start getting out and doing some training.
What's been the toughest thing about it? Obviously, like you said, you guys did a massive, obviously, preseason and then started round one. Obviously, not the result you wanted in round one, but I know from our preseason, having 3 months of preseason and having the season cancelled, it was tough. So, what was that like to do that much work and then have it sort of postponed?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just disappointment. Like you say, you do. The boys do 3 or 4 months of this real hard slog training. Get themselves in good shape for the season, and after round one, when you get told it, things are going to shut down for a while, I think the first thing is disappointment. But then I think as time goes on now, it's like for myself, I've been learning a little bit about other coaches and what they do and how they inspire their players and their philosophies and culture and that they set up. And I suppose you get all these good ideas, but you can't actually put them in place at this point in time until you've actually got some players there to work with. So that's probably been the hard part from a coaching perspective. And then I think just the general, in yourself in sport, mate, just that general camaraderie and being around people every day. For me, I've been in this industry now for 12 years, and it's sort of all I've known for that period of time is going to work every day. And, I think the good thing for me is you get to work with elite athletes that want to be the best. And, at this point in time, we can't really do that. So that's been the hard part. But I think being in contact with the boys where we can has been really good. And the good thing is these guys are training together in pairs, making sure they're doing the right thing, getting themselves as fit as possible and doing as much as they can. But I think the thing that what I've gathered from the boys is just that contact work that they're not allowed to do, is the thing that they're missing. That competitive environment that brings them to work every day is the thing that they're really missing. But look, as I said, hopefully it's just around the corner. We get things going in the right way and in the right manner. That's, against all the, obviously working within the rules and regulations that, are set by both the government and the AFL to get back into it.
So what have you been doing now that the restrictions have eased a bit? Have you coaches been able to have any type of contact or anything with any of the players yet?
No, not so much on a one-on-one perspective in terms of, schoolwork. All we've been able to do, mate, is, contact them, as I said, via phone or link-ups like this. But, as I said, they've been able to do that. So as a coaching group, we catch up on a regular basis, on a weekly basis to, go through things that we're learning and that sort of stuff. But that's about it. First time in Queensland, man. It's rained for so long. Is that the rain in the background?
Man, it's actually getting pretty chilly. I don't know what it's like down the Gold Coast, but it's been pretty chilly up here.
Well, this is the first time it's rained, I reckon, in about 4 or 5 weeks. And you're right, it's getting a bit cold at night, but I just noticed my lawn's getting a little bit of hail, which is nice.
Oh, wow. You might have to head inside for the rest of it, mate.
Yeah.
You spoke about some other coaches you're trying to learn up on and see different things and stuff like that. Who are some of the coaches you've sort of looked at during this break?
Yeah, well, I've listened to a bit of Steve Kerr and Pete Carroll. They've started up their own little podcast, which has been quite interesting. And, a lot of it for me, and you probably know in the basketball industry, is that getting too loud?
Yeah, a little bit.
Pause it? I'll run inside, hey?
Yeah, I'll maybe go inside because it's starting to get a bit loud. Yeah.
Sorry, man.
No, you're right.
Podcast on the go, mate. How good's that? Sorry, buddy. Yeah, been listening to a bit of Pete Carroll, and he's been really awesome in terms of the way they set up their environment. And It's interesting because a lot of these guys, and you might have listened to a bit of Steve Kerr, but they don't talk a lot about, training and such and the drills and things like that they do. A lot of it's about the environment that they create in terms of, Steve Kerr talks a lot about joy and, how every time, someone walks in to watch their training, they should see joy on the players' faces. They should see, empathy if guys are hurt. They should see, competition, and they just, and Pete Carroll's a big one about competition. As a coach, no matter what he's doing, whether he's, online talking to his players, he's playing a game of chess, or he's competitive. And I think, that brings it out in his players and that as well. So a bit of the environment stuff's been something that I've been interested in, but also looking into a bit of the psychology as well around, what makes these players tick, and how as a coach can help out players during the game. So whether it's on the phone during the game or whether it's a quarter time break, what information do they actually want that's going to resonate with them? And mate, being a coach yourself, half the stuff we tell them, their focus is somewhere else, so they probably don't really hear it anyway. So, what are two maybe, real key words that resonate with these players? And each player is going to be different, but as a coach, how can you involve yourself in every single individual of those players to, give them one word if they're not going well, or, keep the encouragement up if they are doing something right. So again, it's a few things, as I said before, that, you learn and you want to put into practice, but unfortunately at this point in time that we can't until training goes back.
Yeah, I know. But what's it been like? Have you guys, as far as preparing for this comeback, like you guys as coaches, like what have you guys been able to do, or have you guys been able to prepare for a comeback aside from just the individual sort of meetings and that with the players and stuff? Like, what have you guys done to prepare for a comeback?
Yeah, look, mate, we did a little bit on reviewing our pre-season around the drills and stuff that we did, and how they worked and where we thought the group was at this point in time. And then going forward, what do we need to change, or what constraints do we need to put in at training to allow these players to further develop? So that was sort of the first part of it. And I think that the hardest thing's been at this point in time is, the ever evolving scenarios of when we'll be back, how many players will be able to train at a time. Some reports are saying, a whole group. Some are saying, there'll only be 8 players that we can coach. Can we actually be out in the ground with them? Do we have to coach from the stands? There's all these sort of different type of scenarios. So I suppose as a midfield coach of what I'm looking after, I'm looking at the different drills that, may be the best for our guys when we go back. And then until we get further, clarification from, AFL and obviously Dewey as the head coach around what we can actually do, then we can really finalise a lot of that. But I suppose at this point in time, mate, we're throwing up a lot of different scenarios about what we may be able to do in what could only be 2 or 3 weeks of, full pre-season as such, before we can actually start playing round 2.
What are your thoughts on where you guys are at? Obviously, like you spoke about before, didn't have the first game that you probably wanted to, but you guys are trying to build something there. Obviously, I believe this is Dewey's second year there, and your second year as well. What are your thoughts on where you guys sit as far as a program at the moment?
Yeah, look, mate, I think, before I came, the year before, they did a lot of, clean out in terms of, a rebuild in terms, I think they moved on anywhere from, 13 players, off the list, and then added another. So whenever you make that big a change, it always takes a little bit of time for them to gel and get to know each other and what makes it work. And also, I think from my perspective, when I came in, I think I was one of 11 new changes in the football department as well. So that's quite a big change when you look at it that way. So look, we're we're really pleased with our pre-season, and obviously our couple of pre-season games that we had. We were really impressed with what we put on the park. But as I said, unfortunately, round 1 didn't go to plan. So look, we're a young group. But the important thing is that we don't use that as an excuse. We want to make sure that every time we go out there, we're competitive and we put our best foot forward and be in a game every time that we can win. So as much as we're a young group and we're learning, we've still been able to bring some experience into our side this year, the likes of Hugh Greenwood, obviously Brandon Ellis from Tigers, And we've still got some guys that we missed out. Rory Thompson's obviously coming back from a knee reconstruction. Pierce Hanley's still trying to get his calf right. So we've got a bit of experience there to rely on. And we're lucky, obviously, enough to be able to get number 1 and 2 in the draft in Matt Rowell and Noah Anderson. So there's some, real exciting times for our football club. So as much as we're building, mate, we still want to be making sure that we're really competitive and we continue to improve as a football club and keep stamping our brand of what we want to stand for every time we hit the park.
How difficult is it, though? Because, as you said, you don't want to use being young as an excuse and all that sort of stuff. But have experienced a younger team when I moved up to the sunny coast and took over that team. I thought there'd be plenty of patience even at that level, which is a lower level compared to you guys. And there was none at all. As much as you guys want to stay patient and build something, how difficult is it, when you're dealing with expectations of fans and everything else around as well?
Yeah, it is tough, mate. And I think that's the important thing is making sure when, we're out there in the community and talking to our fans that they have a really, clear picture of what we're about and also a clear picture of what they should see. There's no point us talking about this is what we want to display and show when you go to games, whether it results in wins and losses all the time. Wins all the time. That's another part to it. But what we want to see is obviously effort and energy every time we hit the park. So I think that's the most important part that we continually, talk about as a coaching group, but also as a club. And I think it is also, last year, mate, we lost 18 in a row, and it's really hard to, fathom that. You don't want to be doing that regularly. So it is challenging every week to, continually get these players up and making sure that they're in the right mindset. And I think, as I mentioned before, that, talking about the psychology and how we can continue to work with our players around, what a really good performance looks like for them. I think that's the stuff that will help us, each week deal with, whether it's a loss or, a win. If we win, how do we continue to build that on that? So I think that comes with maturity and also, our leadership group and making sure those guys are leading from the front and continue to help build, this football club and what we're about.
Does it help you guys knowing that you guys have some people in the football staff department that have sort of been a part of successful programs? Obviously, Dewey's been successful at the highest level. You've been with Adelaide, who was an immensely successful team when you were there and stuff like that. And I'm sure you have other guys in the coaching staff that have been a part of those type of environments. Does it make you feel optimistic that you guys feel you probably have the right things in place to build this program up?
Yeah, definitely, mate. I think, without sort of talking out of school, I think that was one of the club's, philosophies when they went and recruited players, as well as staff, was that they wanted to get the right people that were there to fit the right jobs that, again, did have some experience, and that's why we've brought some, more experienced players in. And as you said, some coaches that have been, with some clubs that have had some really good success. And I think it goes back to that culture side of it in terms of people that have been involved with really good cultures and what it takes to create a really good culture. And that's probably, with John Haynes and Dewey, obviously, as part of their recruiting for staff is what they've really focused on. So, I think from, my experience, I've been able to share, with players what some of the best players that I've worked with do and, how they prepare week on, week out and, what they do, the little things that they do that can add up to the big things, which I think's been great for some of our young kids to learn when you tell them stories about, Rory Sloane and what he does and Taylor Walker and Eddie Betts and, Tom Lynch and the likes of these guys, how hard they train and, lucky enough to work with some really good coaches, in Phil Walsh, who, for me was one that, really emphasized to me what training standards was all about and a culture and what standards mean, and how it builds a culture in a club. With Phil, if we didn't have the right socks on, we weren't allowed out on the track, little things like that just lead to the bigger picture and what you want to stand for. So I think, as you said, some of our coaches have got some really good experience and some stories to share with some of our younger guys.
Did you have a relationship with Dewey before this, from Adelaide or anything like that?
Yeah, it's sort of funny. It was I was looking back this the other day. In 2011, we actually did our level 3 coaching course together through the AFL. So that was sort of our first, contact. But obviously, I worked in Adelaide for many years, and then I was working with Josh Franco there, who is really good mates with Dewey, and he sort of mentioned to Dewey one day that to maybe give me a call and see where I was at and where I wanted to go with my coaching. And it sort of flowed from there, mate, in terms of, how it all sort of, come to. So, that was sort of my, first sort of initial contacts with Dewey, yeah.
What's he been like as a coach? Obviously, this is his first head coaching job, but he's obviously been a successful assistant before. What's he like as a head coach?
Yeah, look, he's been really good, mate, in terms of from a coaching perspective first. He really is, allows us to, run our ship around the way we want to sort of develop our players. He gives us really good autonomy to be able to do that and put in our, little spin, I suppose, the way, we want to coach around our players. So in terms of that, he's been really good from that perspective. He's a really good, relationship coach. The players really respect him. He's really, he's easily approachable for them. And I think that's, one thing that, creates that really good atmosphere. So I think for him, over the last couple of years, it's been pretty strenuous in terms of, he's had to make some really big decisions and help out from a, more holistic club point of view. And I reckon now he's really keen just to, now things are sort of, well, when I say back on track, unfortunately now, it's taken a little bit of a turn, but I think he really wants to, get himself into the real, the more nitty gritty of the coaching side and be able to, continue to develop this footy club. But, he's done a power of work to get the club to where it is. And, obviously the last, this week, obviously there's going to be, some hard decisions around people that, they want to keep on. And unfortunately, some people are going to have to be moved on. And, that's the worst part about, what's going forward. And, we're no different to, I assume, other companies around, the globe that are going to have to make the same decision. So not something that I assume, a senior coach really likes doing, but unfortunately it's all part and parcel. And hopefully once we get through this, we've got some, really good footy ahead for the coming years for the, the Gold Coast Football Club.
And mate, after coming up here from Adelaide, how many years did you spend in Adelaide?
Yeah, I was there roughly just under 12 years. So, a fair bit of time. Yeah.
And you guys were pretty successful, including making a grand final in 2017, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Unfortunately lost that. But difficulty at the end. Let's just call it difficulty at the end. But tell us about your time in Adelaide and then end up telling us about why you decided to move on from there.
Yeah, look, I love my time in Adelaide, and obviously I'm born and bred South Australian, and same with my wife and obviously my kids. So, South Australia is home for us. But look, I love my time in Adelaide. It's a bit of a unique story. I started off in the merchandise shop, selling badges of like Ben Hart and Mark Rasciuto, Simon Goodwin, Andrew McLeod, all the the superstars of Adelaide. I probably sold you a couple, mate, or a scarf here and there or a hat. I did that for sort of a year and a half, and that was sort of my foot in the door. And I moved into recruiting for a couple of years with Matt Rendell, and I love that, just watching footy 24/7, looking at the next best talent coming through and, helping out wherever I could and, going to games and scouting players, that was really interesting. And then I was lucky enough for that to sort of evolve into a development job, which saw me out on the track a little bit more under Neil Craig, who was the senior coach back then. And I worked with some great mentors of mine that I still talk to today, and Peter Jonas and Alan Stewart, who, really helped set up the Adelaide Football Club and the development program, to help where, the club got to, like you said, back in 2017. So, that was a real learning curve for me when I first started. I think it was, about 2009 when I, started getting into the development, rolling ground balls to, as I said, Andrew McLeod and, Mark Rasciuto and these type of guys. And, as I said, it was, a great time. And that just evolved under, over years where I eventually in 2017, I was the team defence coach. Like you said, when we played in the grand final, that was under Don Pike. And, I had some great mentors there as well in David Teague, who obviously now is a senior coach at Carlton. And he was one that probably I worked under him as the forwards development coach. And he was probably one that really allowed me initially to evolve as a coach and get me out of my shell and out of my comfort zone. He'd throw to meetings, meet at meetings when I wasn't expecting it, and basically allowed me to just run the session or run a training drill. And, that allowed me to gain the respect and trust of the playing group, which was awesome. And, I had some amazing forwards that we work with, probably, back in the day was probably the best forward line in the competition when you look at it. And, as a development coach, and I've told this story a few times, but, looking at guys when being a development coach that receive their Guernsey to make their AFL debut, I reckon as a development coach, it's one of those really emotional days. And I'm a bit of an emotional person, but, when you see these guys receive their Guernsey from their family and know all the hard work they've put into, take the first step of playing their first AFL game, it really, really breaks you down at times. And to this day, I still keep in contact with the guys, and I use Charlie Cameron as an example of a kid that came in, was so shy, compared to what you see to him today.
Yeah, exactly.
The way they developed to, him being an All-Australian last year, it just gives you a real, sense of belonging when you're able to help these guys, no matter what it is. And, some of these guys I still keep in contact, today and those sort of things. And it's really heartwarming to see these guys and their stories. And I think as a coach, we're not there for ourselves. We're there to help these guys achieve their goals. And if we do that, then we, have some success along the way as a coach, and we get the rewards along the way from that point of view. So that was probably, some of my really good times at Adelaide. As I said, working with some elite players and elite coaches. And it came to a time, mate, where, I was at the end of my contract at Adelaide, and, we'd had a pretty tough year in 2018. And obviously that's on record around, a lot of different sites, mate, that you can read up on. And I was, lucky enough, Adelaide were keen to keep me on and see where I'd develop. But I also got this opportunity from, the Gold Coast Suns and Stewie in terms of, a club looking to rebuild and start a future and see where they could, take the club. And it's not a decision, mate, that you take lightly. Obviously, I had to uplift my wife, Colleen, who obviously had a successful flower business back in Adelaide, and kids that I think at the time were 9, 7, and 5, I think it was. So, for them to lose, their friends that they see regularly and uplift and come and live up here in the Gold Coast and try and make new friends and go to a new school and all that, it's not a decision you take lightly. So, a lot of this goes, to Colleen's credit. She's been fantastic in allowing me to, pursue my goals. And, mate, she was a really good basketballer back in her day as well. And something
she's a very, very good basketballer.
She loved coaching and, back in the day, back there as well. So she sort of had to give that up. But, we had the discussion, and in the end it was a really, Gold Coast offered me a great opportunity that sees me today coaching, obviously, the midfield, and which was something that, I really wanted to do, was to move out of sort of development. And then, as I said, in Adelaide, my last couple of years, I was looking after team defence, to really owning a group of players in the midfield here and seeing what I could do and seeing how I could help the Gold Coast Suns become a successful football club. But it hasn't taken long, mate, for us to get back in the basketball. Colleen's on a committee. Our kids are playing for the Gold Coast Celtics, and I'm back coaching basketball, coaching the 20s this year, and coaching the 20s, coaching the under 13. So I don't think basketball's ever going to leave us, mate. But look, we're really happy with the move we've made. We bought a house up here, and I've got another year and a half, hopefully, on the contract to go, and hopefully it can be for longer. But we just got to wait and see, the environment we're in now and where it takes us.
Yeah, nice. Well, speaking on your time in Adelaide, you are under, or sort of spent time there under a fair few coaches. Obviously, Neil Craig was first there. Then I think it was Brayden Sanderson after that, wasn't it?
Yeah, yep.
And then
for a while.
Phil Walsh, obviously, unfortunately, couldn't coach longer. And then Don Pike took over from him. What were you able to learn from those different coaches, and what were they like? Brayden Sanderson was a younger coach, and then Phil Walsh seemed like a sort of really tough guy from the outside. I don't know what he's like from the inside, but I remember after he passed, just how much the players talking about him really loved and enjoyed being coached by him. And then obviously Don Pike came in later on. So what were those coaches like, and what were the differences and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, look, I suppose, like most coaches, everyone's got their style and the way they do things. And, I think, Neil Craig and, Phil Walsh, in terms of training intensity and, standards and all that sort of stuff, were ones that, and in terms of, intensity at training was probably the main thing. I remember when I was there with Craig, some days we were out on the track for 3 hours, just that was his sort of philosophy, to get as much training in as possible and challenge the players from a physical load, where Walsh's philosophy was still that hard, intense philosophy, but we were out there for 45 minutes and it was like bang, 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 next drill, next drill, next drill. And the players came off and they were absolutely cooked, but, they knew how to train hard. So, those guys were really good in that phase. And from an impact point of view, I've never seen a coach in 9 months, when Walshy was there, have as big an impact on a group that I've been involved in, I've ever seen. The players, there was, and as you said, and mentioned before, the respect that they had for him. He did things differently, but the respect, and there was some real clarity around what he was about and what he expected from a group. And I think that was the thing that hit, pretty much from day one, around what the expectations were, what we needed to do, and where we needed to go as a football club. So I suppose from a standards point of view, that was really, their sort of niche. The other couple of coaches in terms of relationships, Sando was fantastic with his relationships with players and what he was about. And Pikey was, really detailed in terms of, what he wanted and the detail that he'd go into. He was a real heavy into his stats and gathering information and, continually, how can we evolve, trainings. It was a bit of a joke with Pikey. I think at one stage there we had 150 different drills. There'd be, like drill 120A, 120B, but he was always looking for, how can we, create and keep developing and changing, the scenarios, so the players keep learning. So, yeah, look, mate, there's been, many different coaches that I've been lucky enough to work with from a senior level, but also, as I said, some fantastic assistant coaches that I've been lucky enough to work with that, you've sort of, as everyone does as a coach, mate, and you would have your own sort of philosophy, but it continues to evolve and, things change. And as I said, earlier on, listening to some of these coaches at the elite level in the NFL and NBA, I've taken a few things out of there that I may not have thought of, or my thoughts may have been different, but all of a sudden when I hear these theories, I go, yeah, I might try that. I don't mind that idea. So, yeah, I think the most important part, though, Matt, I think as a coach is you still want to be yourself. You still want to, make sure you are who you are and coach the way you want to, and continue to challenge yourself and listen to different ideas. But all in all, it's that, making sure that you're authentic in the way you go about it, but continue to learn. And we're learning every day. Even this COVID stuff's thrown up so many different ideas, and I'm sure it's not the same. I'm sure it's not just AFL, but I'm sure businesses around the world now are thinking, wow, maybe people can work from home. Maybe we can Zoom in, it's going to cost me a little bit less in rent and that sort of stuff and computer paper and things like that. So, I'm sure, off the back of this, there's going to be so many different things that people will think of in the way they go about their business.
Going back to Phil Walsh, mate. Like I said, I remember seeing all the videos and stuff around it, and then watching the team play their first game back. I think it was in Fremantle. Where it was really emotional. And that, what was that whole time like when that happened?
Yeah, mate, it was really difficult. I think we had, a period there. Unfortunately, we lost Dean Bailey. Only years, a few years before that. So, the club, was hit pretty hard, mate, in terms of, the loss of some lives and obviously, changes in coaches and, just little things like that led to big things. So, a lot of credit goes to, some of the players there, mate, around the way they held themselves together. But, I don't, I've never been involved with it. And obviously there's not too many in Australia where, your senior coach is, unfortunately taken away. And, I remember listening and hearing the phone, or, getting a phone call. I think it was 4:30 in the morning from the footy manager, telling us what had happened. And you're just in disbelief and you think, nah, that's a dream, it's not real. And, to see so many faces. And as I said, mate, I think the biggest thing was the amount of people that he'd touched in such short period of time. And, there was probably some relationships that, I probably didn't understand were deeper than what I actually thought or what I knew. And as you saw, mate, in that time, it wasn't just our football club that was hurt. He'd been involved with, many different football clubs, and he'd had an impact at so many different football clubs. And I think that's the great thing about sport and especially the AFL industry is when things like that happen, as you saw, mate, everyone rallied behind each other. It was a coach from a different club that started the circle, after the game. And, it was, I suppose from our point of view, it wasn't about our wins and losses about that time. It was about, as a football club, how we're going to get through it, remembering what Phil did for our football club and, the impact that he'd had on so many people and what, the number one thing was to making sure that people were, all right, and making sure that we looked after that people, the people in our football club and the players and helping them through this. And, there was so much support. I mean, you only had to look at some of the photos of, the flowers and all that sort of stuff that was sent in. And, look, mate, it took, a really long time for players, and there's some, and, myself, it's going to take time to get over, what impact he actually had. And, I'm sort of lucky enough to be able to stay in contact with my wife, with, his wife. And, again, just, feeling for the people that are really hurting. And, it's something, that we never ever want to see and happen again, mate. And, something that hopefully never happens in our lifetime. But, as I said, it was really hard, really emotional. But, I think we did everything we could to make sure that, everyone, including his family, was feeling our support and care. And that was the number one focus at that point in time.
And after that, was it Don's first year where you guys made the grand final?
No, I think it was his second. Yeah, so I think, I'm pretty sure it was his second year, 2017. So I'd have to. Sorry, mate.
That's right. That's my job. That's right.
I think and Walshy sent some absolutely fantastic, foundations, and I think that was the thing that a lot of the players, were driven by, going forward. And to this day, I know a lot of them, have always got him in their thoughts, to drive them as a player and a playing group. And, a lot of them, as I said, will forever be grateful of what, Phil did for their football career.
And on those standards, could you guys tell, because I think he's made a preliminary final under Brenton Sanderson, I think it was against Hawthorn, and then he's lost Tippett. I think he's had a couple of down years after that. But could you, obviously when Phil took over and then when Don was there, could you guys tell you guys were building towards something successful there?
Yeah, definitely, mate. I think we had, a really successful list. I think, we had a lot of talent there, a lot of experience, some really good young kids coming through. So I think that was, we thought we were in a really good place and we were in a really good window there to, have some success. And, it was, as you talk about, what was, some of the legacy and stuff, I still heard a lot of people talking about, elite standards when we were at training, and, that was something that Walshy brought in back in those days. So, again, it was that standard and training that I think was set back then that allowed us to continue to flow, as well as just tweaking with our game style and game plan. And, Pikey was, really big on the offensive side of the game. And, as you could, I think, in some of those years we set some records, around high scoring. And, I think we were number one in the competition consecutively for a couple of years around, the highest scoring team in the competition. And then, for 1 year there, we were number one, I think, in the comp for, defense as well. So, we had some, we had the game style and game plan to go all the way. And we thought we had the group. And unfortunately, just, that one day in September, we didn't bring what we brought all year. And unfortunately, that's what you got to do.
And how are you guys able to still move forward and even be more successful? I think you guys lost one of my favourite players in Patrick Dangerfield, and everyone thought it was, the end of you guys being a good team and all that sort of stuff, but you just went forward after that. How are you guys able to do that? Because Patrick Dangerfield's a hell of a player.
Yeah, he is. But I think, again, it came down to, the development and I suppose we were lucky enough to get an SANFL team back then as well, which allowed all our players to play together, which, helped obviously develop our game plan at a lower level as well. So I think that was, made it an easier step for players to step into roles when they opened up. And, one player, as you know, mate, doesn't make a team. And, I think what that did, when we lost a few players, was just allow other players to step up and show what they were about. But I think the pressure that we were able to create underneath, made players at the top level perform week in, week out, because they knew if they didn't, there was someone knocking on the door underneath. So I think, and competitiveness was, the key to be able to keep driving that.
And that year you guys made the grand final. Like I'm a Crows supporter, maybe at the moment. And like through my lifetime, I only went.
Mate, don't worry.
I only went down to Adelaide after they had won the 2 premierships, and it seemed like every year the Crows were good, they lost in the prelim final. When they had Rashudo and all those guys in the 2000s. Obviously, they won the 2 premierships, and then that year where you guys were doing really well, it seemed like Geelong were your bogey team a bit. In the years leading up, and that season during the regular season, and then you faced them in the prelim final. Was that a massive hurdle to get over, like Geelong, because it seemed like they had the wood over you guys a bit? And was that spoken about in the lead up to it at all?
Yeah, look, a little bit. I think, probably the big one was when we played them at, what was, Cardinia Park back in the day, was, everyone finds it hard to win down there. So that was probably the big thing. But, yeah, I think, the belief that we built up, in the playing group through that year, got to a point, and we had a home final that we just realistically didn't think we could lose, and I think that was the belief that we were able to build in the group, and then in front of a home crowd of 55,000, I think it was, who were pretty loud at the best of times, but being in a prelim final, I think that was helped and went a long way to what we were able to do. But the main thing was building that belief in the playing group and letting them know that we can do that.
What went wrong in the grand final? I remember I came down. I was living at the sunny coast. Came down. I think I got a VIP thing at the casino here and drinks package for the day. I was all ready. Adelaide were considered the favourites and that sort of stuff. I think Adelaide kicked the first few goals. I think Greenwood kicked the first goal and looked good in the first quarter. Then sort of all went pear-shaped from there. What happened on that day?
Yeah, look, mate, I think there's been many ways we've unpacked it. Well, back in the, in 2018, how we unpacked it. And, I think in the end, mate, it just comes down to, whether you want it on the day and your ability to compete at the level. And, those games can be won and lost, especially in grand finals pretty quickly. And, had a strong crowd against us. Not that that's an excuse. That was to their advantage, but we just in the end, mate. You got to bring your weapon and make sure that you're switched on from a coaching perspective, but also a player's mentality. So unfortunately, they were better at their weapon than what we were on the day. And as I said, there's been many ways that you can unpack it and look at it, but in the end, if you don't compete and you're not at the level, you get exposed, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell. No matter what sport you play.
And it's okay if you don't want to answer this, but could you tell that was the end of a window?
No, not really. No, I mean, it was disappointing. You hope when you lose like that you come back bigger and better, and with more fight to want to go back there again next year. But the unfortunate thing is there's another 17 clubs that want to do the same, and everyone's trying to get better. So we obviously still thought that we had the group to be able to do it, but when you go through a year when you're probably the team that everyone looks at and everyone wants to work out how you did it, everyone's trying to play the same way or work out ways to stop you. So unfortunately we weren't able to do that in 2018, and we lost a lot of momentum, and that definitely threw a spanner in the works.
Who were some of the players that stood out to you during your time there, and even here? Like, you obviously been around a lot of talented guys. That midfield and that in Adelaide was, you had Patrick Dangerfield before he left, Rory Sloane, the Crouch brothers, all those type of guys, Eddie Betts and all those sort of things. Who were some of the players that stood out to you, and why?
Yeah, look, mate, it's really, like you say, it's really hard because there's some super talent. But, I was lucky enough. I think there was only one player when I sort of left that I hadn't seen walk through the door, and start their career at the Adelaide Football Club. So, I was privileged enough to be able to see a lot of those guys go through that. But, the likes of, obviously, like you say, Eddie and, these type of guys, people look at him and go, wow, like, how does he do that in the game? But he does it at training as well. Like, it's not like a fluke or anything like that. Like, this guy just does it all the time. And Taylor Walker and Tom Lynch, really good leaders of the football club. And, like you said, some of the work rate of Rory Sloane and these type of guys are fantastic. The Crouch brothers, as I said, you could go on and name, nearly a lot of these guys that I've been lucky enough to work with. And, when I get up here, now and I see, I'm up here on the Gold Coast and you see the likes of Touk Miller, the professionalism that they go into, Sam Collins, these guys are the ultimate professional. And I think, you look at every club and you'll be able to pick these guys out. You look at our, new recruits coming in this year, and these kids are really self-driven. And as a coach, that's something that you love, guys that just want to be the best. I was lucky enough, obviously, to work with Hugh at Adelaide, and now he's up here at the Suns, which is awesome for me and obviously for the football club. And, these guys just want to be the best. They want to help. And that's the, really exciting thing. So, to not name, a few, mate, as I said.
Give us one.
Oh, gee. Well, no, I can't do it. I'll get too many text messages if guys listen. As I said, I'm really privileged to be in the position that I am to be able to work with these guys. That's how I look at it. And, everyone that I work with, I've loved in a different way. Some guys it's from a relationship point of view. Some it's from a skill level point of view. Some it's, just helping educate them on a game, or, being a father figure even, they're the things that I love about what I do. And, the opportunity that I've been given up here at the Gold Coast Suns is awesome. And, as I said that before, there's a lot of young kids that are coming through here that, is really exciting for me to hopefully, play some part in their future and what we can do up here at the club.
And go back to your time in development or in sort of recruitment, actually, sorry. And were there any stories that stick out to you as far as someone you saw when they were really young that ended up, being or had a really good career? And are there any really good stories of your time in recruitment in that way?
Yeah, well, there's one that I sort of like to Matty Randell gave me one pick when I was back in the day recruiting, like not so much a pick, but a bit of a guy that I'd like to, that I saw was really talented. And that guy was Jack Gunston. And unfortunately, it didn't turn out for Adelaide. It didn't turn out for Adelaide, but I just really liked the way he moved when I was doing recruiting. And unfortunately, he spent 2 years with us, but now he's gone on, and I think he might be up to 3 flags or something now at Hawthorn, and has become a really potent player at Hawthorn. So I don't want to I'm not putting my name to it or saying that that was it, but that was probably the one guy that I was allowed, I suppose, to put my name through. But I mean, recruiting's an amazing industry, and there's so many different things that go into it, and I love sport as a whole, let alone AFL footy, as being involved with basketball as well. But those days when I was able to watch so many talented kids come through, and you talk of Rory Sloane that was picked 44, I think he was back in the day. Rookies like even to the extent rookies of like Ian Callanan, getting recruited when he was I think he was 25, 26 years of age. To watch him curve out a small career at AFL footy was awesome. And the likes, as I said before, of Charlie Cameron coming in as a recruit. There's a few guys that I was lucky enough to work, Hugh Greenwood, that's come in as a basketballer. And they're the fun things about I remember going back to basketball days, I went and watched Hamish Ogilvie, who was the national recruiting manager at Adelaide then, sent me up to Brisbane to watch. I think it was the under-16s back then, and Jonah Bolden was playing basketball, and it was I came back and I said, Matty, Hamish, I've got one. He's a basketballer. Let's see what we can do. And to that day, I can't remember the young lad's first name, but Smith, the one that got recruited to went to Melbourne. Sean Smith's lad.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Victoria. He was my number one when I said he was the number one player back then, and I think he was about a 6'3" point guard, under 16s, dunking, all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, he's got it. And I looked at his name, and his last name was Smith. And I went, and unfortunately, back then he got recruited to Melbourne. But little fun activities like that was something that I really enjoyed from recruiting. And obviously having that basketball background, they sort of sent me to a lot of those basketball tournaments. And I was lucky, obviously, I had a few contacts in basketball that were able to sort of point me in the right direction and look at a few players that they thought had the talent as well. So, I love recruiting, and who knows, once, they're sick of me as a coach, that might be an avenue that I might, be able to pursue, up here at Gold Coast, or, if it means with another club, that's something that I might be able to do later on as well.
On basketball, why do you think it translates so well? Because obviously, even in my time, I've seen so many people make the switch. When I was at Cadbury in Adelaide, Brodie Grundy, people don't realise Brodie Grundy was a good basketball player in juniors as well. You got Scott Pendlebury. Up here, there's a ton of made the switch. I unfortunately coached, I coached Tom Fullerton, who quit 5 games into my second season when we were 5-0, I think, and made the switch to the Lions, and obviously Archie Smith, Andre Moore's son, and things like that. I think there's a ton more as well. Why do you think it translates so well? And obviously Hugh Greenwood. Hugh Greenwood was a star at University of New Mexico, signed with the Perth Wildcats, then went to you guys, and people doubted that sort of process and everything as well. But then he's become, a really good AFL player and was a star that year. You guys made the grand final as well. So why do you think it translates so well?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think if we put a AFL basketball team together, I wouldn't mind coaching it, because I reckon it'd be all right. I reckon we'd have some talent there. We'd grab Mason Cox as well.
Exactly.
Look, I think, and obviously playing both sports myself, I think what I found and what I've seen in players is both sports, I think help each other. What I really found from basketball was that peripheral vision. I reckon is, a great attribute to have in footy when you're, in a pack and you can just, reflex handball out to the side, knowing that players are there. I think the defensive side of the game in basketball is really good. I mean, looking at some of the guys with their wingspans and able to deflect balls here and there, that I reckon is really good. And then I look at basketball. Then I look at what footy brings to basketball, and I reckon that competitive element. Guys that love the physicality. Working with the midfielders, we talk a lot about screens and blocks. Actually got Hugh Greenwood to present the other day. Some basketball vision to the midfielders on how they use block, and talking your terminology, rubbing shoulders, and all that sort of stuff, curl to the basket, all those sort of things, where I think as a coach, for me, I've been able to use a lot of those different skills to be able to work with players. And I think the old slash arm type of technique in basketball, I reckon's been really helpful for me for teaching the mids around body work in terms of getting front position and going for a mark. When I was working with the forwards, I used that sort of terminology about getting front, through slash arm, and given what the defense needs you, in those, or what defense allows you, when you're leading patterns, where's their, as I said, I could go on for hours about so many things that I reckon the different skill sets helps basketball players relate to footy. Now, obviously, kicking's a little bit different. It's a little bit harder ball to use than a basketball, obviously. So that the skill set probably is the thing that, if you haven't played footy at a younger age, can sometimes be something that's a little bit harder to pick up. As a bit like, if you go from footy to basketball without playing it, shooting the ball, becomes quite difficult. So, but again, it's a lot of things that you can put into practice. So, yeah, mate, I reckon there's a lot of really good skills out of basketball that and football that vice versa can help each other.
And going through your personal career, obviously I know a lot of it, but tell us about your sort of upbringing, playing both sports. You obviously played a fair bit of AFL and basketball at senior level as well. Just go through your personal journey in both those spaces as well.
Yeah, it'll be pretty short. No, look, I mean, I grew up playing, footy and basketball. My parents, were involved with football and basketball. I think I started when I was about 4 or 5, picking up and playing footy and, playing under 10s and that sort of stuff. So grew up in Harndorf, where I played a lot of footy, and then that zoned me to Sturt in South Australia, in Adelaide, where I played my footy and both basketball. I was lucky enough to play with, the same club, Sturt Basketball Club and Sturt Football Club. And I played that. I actually played both sports up till I was about 22. And the only reason I had to make a decision was because I was getting pretty tired. I was playing at one stage there, I was playing under 19s football in the mornings, and then I was going playing ABA at night. And then back in those days, and I think it may still be the case now, you play double headers. So you play Saturday night ABA basketball, and then I had to go play Sunday. So I think it was, a point where, I was playing and training every day. I was fit. That was the good thing. But I sort of had to make a personal call around, where did I think, maybe was my best chance to succeed. And being a small point guard, mate, obviously,
Hey! Don't put me in the same category, small as you, mate. I might have been before I had a growth spurt, but I'm 6'2", 6'3".
I remember when I used to be able to dunk on you, but now that's gone. Look, it got to a stage there, and obviously my wife was heavily involved with Sturt Basketball Club as well, and she went down the working path. She probably could have played, I'd say, WNBL if she wanted to sort of go that way, but she decided to go working, and I decided to go sort of football. And it was I love my time, and it probably got to a stage where I sort of had to give way for back. I was lucky enough to play with Phil Smythe and Brett Maher, and I probably at some stage had to give way so they could continue their careers, and I had to stop mine. So I ended up they probably were going to go a little bit further than I was. My sort of minutes got, to more handing out the drink bottles and waving the towel on the bench and, wiping sweat when someone fell over, on the court. So I made a call to, I think probably the thing to me as well is I had a few people tell me that, they reckon I could make it as a coach one day. And it was probably the time where I thought, well, yeah, basketball-wise, I'll probably finish. When I say finished, I'm only 22, but I'll probably finish where I can actually get to, and I'll focus a little bit more on footy and see where I can. I was lucky enough to start playing reserves footy, and then was looking at getting my opportunity to play league football. And obviously, I wasn't going to be able to play both, so it was sort of play league footy and see how far I could make it. But as I said, back in the junior days, I had a few coaches say that. I was lucky enough to be sort of a captain here and there, and a few coaches thought that I had a bit of a career in coaching. So it was probably about that time where I started to think, well, what do I need to do to become a coach, and what pathways do I need to do, and where am I best going to be suited? Is it basketball or footy? And I sort of took footy as an option, and played I think up until I was about, I think it was 2007. For footy, and then I got that job in Adelaide in the merchandise. But I was lucky enough to sneak 2 more years of footy up in the country, and that was back at Harndorf, where I always wanted to and always said I'd go back and play, for the team that where I started, and the team that obviously gave me the opportunity to play my football. And my dad, was heavily involved with the football club, and he still is to the days. The president there now and running that football club, and I always wanted to go back and give to the club that sort of gave me. So my best mate's old man was coaching, and that sort of saw me. It was funny. I used to go and do my recruiting job in the morning from, I think, reserves in the Sanford started about 11:25. I'd leave about 10 minutes. I didn't tell my boss this, but I left about 10 minutes before the end of the reserves game, and would shoot up the freeway to Harndorf and have my boots on in the car and get my Guernsey on and run straight out onto the field and play A grade for Harndorf. And then that night, maybe the Crows were playing, so I had to rush back down to Adelaide. And, it was so good though. I got to play with, some really close mates and enjoy my time. And that was sort of my footy career, mate. And then, so as I said, the rest is history, and I'm lucky enough to be back up here and up here on the Gold Coast, and the midfield coach of the Suns, and loving and really enjoying that, and still got my hand and dabble in basketball, as I said, coaching some under-20 basketball, and we go out and watch, obviously, the competition.
As long as it's not for the Rollers, mate. As long as it's for the club and it's not for the Rollers, that's fine.
Well, we go and support the Rollers, when
you go and support Logan when they're playing the Rollers. That's better.
But it's funny because there's a few coaches up here that love basketball, and when I first come up, they said, "Oh, do you like basketball?" And I didn't sort of say, "Oh yeah, I played a little bit." I think Dewey had some wind that he knew I played a little bit of basketball back in the time, and we used to once a week have a bit of an afternoon, once work had done, go into obviously the Carrara complex that we've got up here and play basketball. And I'll tell you what, I've never played basketball with no fouls, no rules before. It's ridiculous, man. I've been watching obviously the Jordan series like a lot of people, and you talk about Jordan rules, and there's no layup rules here. It was chaos, mate. It was full on, but it was so much.
Who was the craziest?
Oh, Dewey didn't mind throwing a little bit out. But, we got the likes of, Dean Solomon and these guys that are pretty big guys, and they tell me Matty Primus was pretty solid back in his day when he was there. And, it's great fun, to let out a bit of steam and that. But, yeah, you got to, talk about peripheral vision. You got to have eyes in the back of your head when you're going for a layup, I'll tell you that.
Oh, shit. Yeah, as a young player, though, like you said, at age 22 or as you're growing up, but specifically, when you're at that age, you thought there was a time where you sort of had a career in coaching, and I was the same. There's definitely a moment where, as a player, you realise your probably path is more in coaching, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. And I reckon it's that hard decision.
It comes to us unathletic people too.
I think the tough part is like you go, no, I can still do it. I can still do it. And then I tell you what, as soon like trying to defend the players these days as a coach, it's ridiculous, man. They're so fit, they're so fast, and I think it comes to a point where one arm's telling you, nah, I don't want to let go. I've still got 3 or 4 more years into me plan. I can still do it. I can still do it. Then you start to get a few injuries, and I think once I actually made the decision where I said, yep, my career's over in terms of footy. Yeah, I can still play socially, but I find that really hard now because I'm so competitive. But it's time now for me to take another path. And I think once you actually make that decision, I think it's like changing jobs. It's really nervous and nerve-wracking, especially for me when, I was looking at, taking this job up here. You think about it, you go, I can do it. Can I do it? I can't do it, But as soon as you make that decision, I reckon it's a massive weight off your shoulders, and then you're full steam ahead. And that was sort of what helped me make that decision was, I got some really good mentors, and obviously Colleen's a great sounding board. My mum and dad, talk to them really regularly, and just throwing and bouncing a few questions off of them, and really helped, I think, make that decision for me that was the path I wanted to take.
Yeah, it's definitely like, I was the same, or not really the same, but I played, obviously spent a few years in the senior system, and then my last year I was playing reserves, and I had bad knees, severe patellar tendonitis in both knees, and I couldn't even train if I wanted to play reserves that week and stuff like that. And I just made the decision. And it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me, to be honest. Starting at such a young age, you look at, coaches normally have that bad period where they start off and, tough years, but I'm already past that. I think learn a lot in those early years, but I was only 25, 26. So best decision I've ever made, but it's tough, isn't it? It's not always easy being a young coach and wanting to do it as well. There's a lot of pressure attached to it. Yeah,
that's right, man. And I think the other thing too is, if you don't have, the brand or the name that, you have played, say, NBL basketball or NBA or AFL footy, sometimes it can be really hard to get into that industry, and, I sort of, made a decision that, I obviously as a young kid, like most kids, if football's your sport, you want to play at the highest level you can. And it got to a point where I sort of knew I wasn't going to play AFL footy. So the next best thing was, right, oh, well, how can I get my foot in the door? How can I work with these athletes? How can I now be the best coach I can possibly be? And, it hasn't been easy for me. I've had some setbacks along the way, and, even over my 12 years time, like there's times where you think you may be ready for the next step, but, you lose that opportunity or someone else gets it ahead of you. So it's, right, what am I going to do now to make sure that next time that opportunity comes up, something is going to be there, and I am the one that they choose. So, I think everyone's got the opportunity to be able to do that, and hopefully, I'm one of those cases where, because I haven't, completely played at the highest level, that doesn't mean I can't make it, as a coach, or if I want to be a physio or, IT or, statistician or something like that, whatever it is, big or small, everyone's got that opportunity if they put their mind to it and they're prepared to do the work to, that was my thing. It was just, I did things when I was at Adelaide that a lot of people probably wouldn't do. As stupid as it is, I dressed up as Claude the Crow. I did things like that because it was like, well, I want to be a part of this football club. I'm going to do something that, someone else might not do, but who knows, that might help down the future. Someone might say, oh, well, he was the guy that was prepared to do this. He's the guy that was prepared to, drive 100 kilometers to do this coaching clinic, or, whatever it is. I think hopefully, that's what's held me in good stead, to getting to where I am today.
And there's two last questions I wanted to ask you. First of all, me as an AFL fan and a person in the media, become frustrated when I see some people. I reckon you might be able to guess who I'm talking about without me even naming the person. Use their platform as a former AFL player just to criticise players today. And I know, do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
A family from Adelaide.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah.
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 So
Oh,
I'm talking about Kane Corns.
yeah.
Just what are your thoughts on, especially his criticism of Taylor Walker, having been with Taylor, and me from the outside as an Adelaide fan, especially when they made the grand final, that thought he was a really good leader and all that sort of stuff. But what are your thoughts on the way he goes about talking to people and his criticism of Taylor Walker?
Yeah. Well, obviously won't be specific in terms of one sort of individual, but I think the media are a massive and important part of our game and our culture and promotion of what it's about. And I think probably from educational point of view, whether it's the club and everyone, I mean, I think more opportunities are starting to arise now where, one of our New Zealand camps, we took a media personality with us to the camp so they could actually, physically see, what was going on and what the players go through and, obviously to build that relationship. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, mate, is we've just got to, as an industry and organisation, football clubs, is continue to build that relationship with the media. And, I think when we do that, then, hopefully everyone's got a better understanding of what actually happens. And, all the stories become, good stories. Now, there's not always going to be, a good story. But for me, it's all about the relationships. I think the more we can build those and continue to build those, I think, all that stuff gets played out. And like, I think as a, playing group and coaching staff, there's things that we've just got to, probably not buy into as well, everyone's allowed their opinion. That's and our industry is fairly heavily scrutinized and we accept that, and that's part and parcel of it. So as I said, my personal point of view is the better that we can build relationships, I feel that the everyone will be on the same page and things will be a lot rosier.
Yeah, the frustrating thing for me watching it is just it's a former player who understands what players go through and that. And
Yeah.
I really admire former players and that who are able to play and then critique players and coaches, but based on actual things that happen. And I just really, yeah. Oh, again, I'm not pressing you on it. I'm just my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, it's just frustrating when the only thing you see from a guy who was a really good player, obviously played more than 300 games and stuff like that, just uses their platform to consistently criticize people. And it's not even criticism, it's just having a go. And I just think it's not very good for the game and for our industry as well. So, and lastly, who is the best player you've seen, been involved with? Like this could be, Andrew McLeod, or it doesn't have to be someone you've directly been involved with or anything. Who would be the best player that you've seen in your time in the game?
Yeah, well, I mean, I saw, obviously lucky enough firsthand to see Andrew McLeod, and he was a pretty special player. The way he moved, and he was very very good player. I mean, when we're talking about, I suppose, position specific, I look at Eddie, as, probably one of the best small forwards in the competition. We, at times in the box, we'd sit there and go, oh, did he just do that? So, but again, it was consistency. It wasn't like he did it once or twice. So, those couple of guys, I reckon, were, when I talk, as I said, position specific, I look at, Daniel Talia as a key defender. I think he's, a super defender, in terms of position and the way he plays the game. And then you look at, sort of the modern era, and, like Patrick Dangerfield, he's just, so powerful and, very impressive. Dusty Martin, obviously, these guys are super, skillful, powerful guys that, they're the guys that actually change the game. And then you look at Brodie Grundy, he's changing the evolution of a tall midfielder, averages, what it would be 25, possessions a game. He can have some games where he's just the dominant ruckman, those sort of things. So, yeah, look, I mean, mate, when I look at people that do all,
you got to give us one. You can't sit on the fence with two of these.
When I look at people that do all those lists all the time, I'm like, well, buddy, frankly, like, where do I? Oh God, how am I going to do this? I'll go with McLeod, mate. I reckon. Yeah, I'll go with him. I reckon he was, pretty smooth mover, and just the way he went about things was pretty good.
Yeah, it's still a bit of a shock to me that Adelaide sort of. Hey,
who's yours?
Mine, to be honest, would be McLeod would be up there, but I would probably say that's a tough one. See, I would say Patrick Dangerfield because I love the way he plays, and I've sort of never seen someone with that sort of speed and ability to take the ball on, like just hit packs and stuff like that. But he's the one thing that stands out for me is against him is that he hasn't won a premiership yet. So, Mark Rashudo was always my favourite player. I just thought the way he was could go forward, could play in the midfield. He was so tough. But I still think a bit of an odd choice. The best player I've seen at their prime when I started being an AFL fan was Andrew Voss. Michael Voss, sorry. Michael Voss. Those Brisbane teams were insane. Just the way it was like they had a mixture of rugby league and AFL to them. Like they were just super tough, would hit people. Similar to Rashudo. Like I saw a game where Adelaide, when they had that team of Rashudo, Goodwin, McLeod, I think we're up by 30 against Brisbane one year. I think it might have been 2004, the year they lost to Port in the final, the Lions. But they were up by like 30, and then Voss just went forward and kicked like 6 goals. Like the way he was able to do everything and the way he led from the front and everything, I thought was just
awesome.
It was one of the best. So he's probably mine.
It's a tough one. I said when you see all the different people ride him, you go, he was good, but then you go, well, like look, Wayne Carey, like everyone says greatest footballer ever, so but different.
Mine probably goes on a bit of consistency too. Like obviously I love the flashy players like McLeod. Acker's one that stands out for me. He was insane when that team won those 3 premierships in a row. But they weren't as good as say your Rashudos and Vosses and that consistently. So that probably stands out for me, I reckon.
That's true. It's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah. So all right, mate. Well, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Make sure you get out to some more Logan versus Gold Coast games. Hopefully.
We will, mate. Don't worry.